And hello and welcome to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm David Nicholas, and our guest this time is Eric Borregard. He is a candidate for the U.S. Senate. We have one U.S. Senate seat that is up for this election of 2002. He is the Green Party candidate seeking that seat. Eric, thanks very much for taking the time to join us today.
David, it's good to be here.
When we talk about the issues as a whole, then obviously there would be concerns at the state level that any federal office seeker would need to be concerned with, but in terms of the U.S. Senate specifically, what do you see as the primary issues that voters will have on their minds when they go to the polls?
I would like to see the voters start looking more at the election process itself and why it doesn't work. We had the problems in Florida, recently in Michigan during the primary, 220,000 ballots thrown in the trash, and then they go certify the election. Why are the candidates that the people most would like to be candidates don't become elected, and the minor people, like for example Bush, gets elected? You know, it's because the system we have, the winner-take-all system we have, doesn't really work. It's good for two parties, but we have more than two parties. We have many parties, so we need an election process that takes that into account, so that we don't just have two parties, people want them, and then the other party wins. We saw that with Perot in '92. He came in, we got Clinton. Same thing, he got 8% in '96. We got Clinton again, we didn't get Dole. And this time, now from the right, or from the left, excuse me, we have Nader. He gets 3%, and we get Bush. So we clearly have a system that doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. We know we want representation, and we're getting the loser wins every time. We need to look at election reform. We need to look at three parties, why we try to keep preserving two-party system, and all the advertising and the focus on two parties and the exclusion of third parties is the #1 issue for us in this election, and continuing on and on until we fix the system.
I had a recent conversation with a doctoral fellow at Columbia, and he is working with a number of students to form a greater awareness of third-party candidates, and I asked him, and I would pose the same question to you, if the view from third parties is to eventually join those resources into one third party, or to still maintain some sort of autonomy in terms of the different views of that, in terms of perhaps overall representation.
I would prefer to see a diversity of views. There's going to be social issues that the third parties are never going to agree on. And there's already an independence. A lot of people just vote independent, and they look at the issues per candidate. I think that I think what we really need to do is fix the system. I think one solution is instant runoff voting, where instead of checking one candidate or the other, you number the candidates 1, 2, 3, and then in that process you would allow the most popular one who got the most.
There's also been a call at the state level for in this case, they're dealing with the gubernatorial candidates receiving taxpayer support and a mandate in terms of the amount of debates that would be required to have those views of those running for the top seat in state government to have those represented across the state. I'm wondering if there is any move like that that would be similar in terms of the federal level?
Yeah, there has been. This year, a lot of organizations have joined together, Common Cause. There's a whole list of activist organizations for something called Free Airtime as a campaign. Roger Cronkite did a video, and it was sent around. We had it on our show. And the move there is to provide free airtime on major media, at least just before the election, to provide forums and so on. And I think if you take public money, part of that should be tied to some sort of mandatory participation in some forums, not just go high because you're high on the polls like Granholm is doing right now.
There was the debate that did take place between Senator Levin and Representative Ruskowski. In terms of the inclusion basis, how did that issue stand in terms of your candidacy?
Levin's playing the same game. He's hiding away in Washington. He's avoiding debates. Ruskowski was willing to let third parties in. I talked to him. We did have a short debate in Farmington Hills. It was like 15 minutes. But what could he do? What happens is that what happens there, they create a pariah out of third parties. They'll say, well, if I debate a third party, I must really be desperate, or I must, instead of taking a wider view that let's let everybody hear the story, They again want to push everybody into two decision. It's either Democrat or Republican. So they create a major minor party system, and then they it's like any kind of exclusion, you know, or prejudice against a group. And they inflict that on the third parties because they hold all the strings.
Do you think it would be an issue, your candidate's from this state but seeking federal office, so does this become a somewhat blurred federal versus state issue in terms of how those mechanisms should be changed, or do they have to be changed first at the state level?
No, it's actually much local. And the Green Party is about grassroots, about local control, and about local communities could easily create instant runoff voting as their selected system. There are some communities that use it already in the United States. They put it on the ballot in Alaska this year for a whole state. It didn't pass because people don't understand it, and there's a natural tendency not to want to change, you know. But I think since local communities are already adopting it, more and more will, as they see it's more and more fair. I think how many more elections are we going to elect people that are the minor choice of the people? When do we want a representation versus a winner takes all? And who wins in this current system of winner takes all? Well, evidently we end up a mush party of two parties is basically one party ideologically. If I present my opponent, Carl Levin, he's taken more PAC money than the Republican, 15 times more corporate influence. And this is a Democrat, and the business candidate or the business party of the Republicans can't cut through because all the business and interests want is control and power. They don't really care about the ideology either way. You just want that man and want him to do what we want. And once they got Carl Levin in this case, you're stuck with him. And you know, Rakowski doesn't even seem to be trying.
The control issue of the U.S. Senate is something that's been talked about in terms of the overall issues then and how that control of the U.S. Senate may sway with this election. What other issues do you see impacting the potential outcome?
Well, as far as a Green Party candidate, if I was to win, I would naturally gravitate through some sort of coalition to the more liberal element in the Senate. That's what happened in Germany. Recently, the Green Party won re-election in Germany along with the SPD party, or the Social Democratic Party in Germany. And they won by a large margin. They were actually slated to lose, but evidently when the Iraq issue flamed up and there was a lot of anti-American, anti-Bush sentiment, they suddenly began to rise in the polls as they criticized the war, and they ended up with an 8% margin. And now they are again re-elected as the ruling party in Germany. So we would evidently be a coalition with the Democrats. And so I don't, for them, the Democrats really shouldn't find us a threat. They should really find the fact that there's progressive people. They've gone too far to be like the Republicans. They take the money, they're influenced. None of them are clean anymore. Here's a clean, new, fresh Democratic appeal. And I think that we could fit well into a three-party situation. But again, the election system is busted, so it doesn't accommodate third parties. And that needs to be fixed. We need democracy, and that is the big push. We are always talking about democracy, democracy rising with Nader's crusade, and we'll continue that on into the next election.
The issue of Iraq has dominated the views, especially when it has come to the federal issues. As we record this and then also look ahead to the election itself, there is a swing of time and the uncertainty as to what direction it would take. What would be your stance in terms of the approach that has been taken thus far? Same, different, and how would you approach that?
The Green Party is the ballot line for no war in Iraq. We believe in nonviolence. We believe in conflict resolution. We believe this is an unjust war, and we believe it is for oil. It is for imperialistic tendency. It has been for 25 years. We've been building up militaries and preparing them for wars in the Gulf. If it was any other part of the world, for example, Rwanda, over 1 million Tutsis were killed. There wasn't a single Marine sent to that disaster. No, this is imperialism spurred by the oil companies. And we believe there's a new economy coming up. 100 years from now, there will be no oil. There will only be one economy, and that will be a green economy. That means you'll be using wind turbines, biofuel. We'll have mass transit because we will not be able to afford the huge fleets of automobiles. We'll have high-speed rail. This is the future. This is the Star Trek we're headed for. Not more and more cars and SUVs bumper to bumper on the highways.
Highlighting then that environmentally based view that is most often associated with the Green Party then, what other issues along those lines do you have as primary to to your campaign for this U.S. Senate seat?
Well, I'd like to appeal to young people because they're the ones who are going to have to live in the future. And I think, you know, it reminds me when I was growing up during the Vietnam era, I saw all these old people stuck in their World War II mentality with the tanks and missiles, and that's what America is. And it was really kind of an ugly trip. I'm saying, young people, don't let it happen again. You have a beautiful, brand new age beginning here, the beginning of the green age and the fossil fuel age of the 19th century with internal combustion and smoke and stink and smell is gone. High-tech alternatives are here today. They're cheaper than what you have. You have a bunch of people putting PAC money into pockets of politicians to keep it from happening. And you can stop it. You can go to the polls and stop it this next election.
Do you have an overall, that is pretty much a capsule, I think, of the message that you would leave for the voters, but in the last couple of moments, in terms of bringing a summary of your views on a number of fronts to that message that you would bring, what would that be in terms of this U.S. Senate seat being up for grabs?
Well, I think we need to be patient. That's the problem with Iraq and in Israel, for example. Those kids grow up there, and you know, Israel is not the 51st state. It's a really sad situation where there's two religions. You have you're not when they grow up they're not allowed to love each other. There's no you can't intermarry in Israel. There's no marriages between religions, and there's no the state can't marry you. You have to go outside. So they grow up as children knowing that I can't love these people. That's just taboo. And so they grow up and they hate each other. And it's a cycle of violence. And for us to get caught up in that sort of theocracy and sort of thing as a nation and get confused and manipulated by our leaders, I think that is really a shame. It's like Romeo and Juliet. You know, the two families, the two communities keep fighting and fighting until something really, really sad happens. And we don't learn from it. That's the wrong thing. If we could just learn from those tragedies, I think we'd be able to face our future with a lot more courage and conviction about where we're headed.
Well, with those concerns and the views on the issues that certainly are going to be very much paramount this election, we appreciate you taking the time from the busy schedule to share those views with us and the voters for Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat this time around. We wish you best of luck with the rest of the campaign as well.
Thank you, David. It's been good talking to you.
I'm David Nicholas. You've been watching Meet the Candidates, and our guest has been Eric Borregard. He is the Green Party candidate for, as we said, Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat. And we thank you for your time and attention as well for this edition of Meet the Candidates.